Right, so my story is a little different to Tim and Thibaut's in the fact that I never was in conventional work at all. I never had an employed job, unless you count working at WH Smith's as an employed job. That was about the extent of what I did. My disillusionment, I look at it in terms of you follow your inner voice or you follow what I call the systems path, which is the conventional way of living that we get told throughout school from our parents as we get older. You have one of two choices. And I started to realize that the conventional path, the systems path, wasn't for me at around university. And the thing which really got me was this whole idea of chasing. I'd been at school for 15 or 16 years being told you've got to get good grades because that's how you get into university. Now that I was at university, I was being told you've got to get a good degree because that's how you get a good job. And then I thought, I know this chase isn't going to end. I was feeling a bit burnt out at the time. This was my first few months at university because I'd studied so hard for my A-levels and put so much into it. And here I was being told the cycle starts all over again. It's not going to stop. You know, as soon as I get to the goal line, it then gets moved a mile further on. And I thought, even at 18 or 19, I thought, this isn't going to stop. If I go into work, I'm going to be told, now you've got to get the promotion. Now you've got to get the one after that. Now you've got to save towards your retirement. And maybe when I was retired at 60, 70, then the chasing would end. But I figured out I was going to be too burnt out to really enjoy those years. So I thought I've got to find something else, or there's got to be something else. And this is about me trying to choose or find what this path was. At the time I was studying politics, and I was interested in it because I was really inspired by people like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Che Guevara. I liked these guys who fought against injustice. I thought that was something I wanted to do somehow. So I thought maybe politics was how I was going to do it. But I was realizing that the world of politics, and especially the way they taught it at university, wasn't going to give me that possibility of fighting injustice. That was my thing. I thought if I left with my degree, I'd have to join the Conservatives or Labour Party, just be a yes man, and what was the point in doing that? I looked at the Green Party, who I support and still vote for, and just thought at the time they were too uninfluential, and I think it wasn't particularly exciting to me to go and join them and try to work with them. But while at university, I discovered personal development books. Somebody recommended The Celestine Prophecy to me. It was the first thing I read. Really got me interested in that world. I then read The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, and I really became fascinated by it. And I thought, okay, well, if I can't go into politics and I can't fight injustice, then maybe I can inspire people. That would be a good thing. I can help them change. And it was around this time I had a vision. Now, I don't want to make it seem biblical because it wasn't. It wasn't voices calling to me or whatever. It was nothing like that. It was more just a moment of inspiration. I imagined myself speaking in front of an audience, being able to inspire them with the words I was saying. And I got such a good feeling from that moment. I call it a moment of intuition. It was something that came to me. Okay, it wasn't a dramatic moment, but it was definitely not something I created in my mind. It was something that came to me. And I thought, how do I get to there? How do I get to live this really inspiring feeling that vision gave me? And at the time, this was before blogging or YouTube or online courses. I thought the best way was to write a book. So that's what I set about trying to do. But that was back in 2002. This is an 18-year journey. And as you can imagine, along the way, there were some very tough times. I'm going to highlight two of them for you guys now because I think it's important that we share the difficulties we go through so we know that it is possible to overcome them and you can get through and move on. Now, the first tough time I remember, or quickly a bit of context before I tell you about that, I was working as a tennis coach and a hypnotherapist. Obviously, Tim had helped me get into hypnotherapy. I was also doing tennis coaching. That was my platform. I decided that was the platform to then shoot at becoming a prominent figure in the personal development world, or a best-selling author. So I was doing that for a few years, even before I ever started writing. But I was finding it difficult. I wasn't making a whole lot of money. I was very lonely. I was just on my own, working on my own the whole time, not a whole lot of friends. And I kind of thought to myself, why am I doing this? I was looking at my peer group who finished university, now had pretty well-paid jobs. long-term relationships, some of them getting married, kids not far off. And I was thinking, why the hell am I doing this? Why am I walking such a difficult path? I've got this politics degree, why don't I just use it? Make some more money, maybe I could get a girlfriend and have a family. And that was one of the difficult things I experienced, was constantly thinking that maybe the grass was greener on the other side, doubting my path because it was difficult. Another one I experienced was fast forward to 2012, when I first published my book. It's now turned into Escape the System. At the time it was called Screw the System, and I just published it on Amazon, pressed enter, and thought that somehow it was just going to take off. Now, me and Thibaut were at a conference yesterday, self-publishing formula conference, and I heard from this woman who basically lived my dream. She did exactly what I did, but she was writing crime and romance novels, and somehow her book did take off magically, without any audience, without any marketing. She did then go on to, she's now sold 4.5 million copies of this series. It's incredible. Anyway, that was my dream, but my dream didn't have the happy ending hers did. My dream had the ending that I made one sale in 6 weeks. It took me 15 months to sell my first 100 copies. So I thought, this is a disaster. I bet my whole future on this book. This was the reason I've been walking this path. So my tough time was coming to terms with the fact that it seemed my dream had failed. Now, how I overcame the first one with the thinking that the grass was greener, that I should perhaps go back to walking the systems path. And if this ever happens to you guys, maybe this process I went through can help you. I would sit myself down and try and think about it really rationally. I would say, look at these people. Okay, yeah, it appears they have a lot of money. It appears they have relationships. It appears they're happy. But what's underneath that? Do they really enjoy their jobs? Or it wasn't actually looking at them. It was so much putting myself in that position. Would I actually be happy in that position? And I'd say to myself, well, no, because what I'm doing wouldn't have any meaning. For me, it wouldn't have any meaning. And I could be in a relationship, but that person would be not necessarily loving me for who I actually am, because I would be hiding myself the whole time. So I said, okay, actually, that makes sense to me. So then I'd say, right, no matter how difficult this path gets, I've got to keep going, because in a way, there is actually no alternative. I have to stick at it. How I overcame the experience with my book bombing initially was, first of all, I gave myself a bit of time off. Mentally, I still kept working, but my edge had gone, because I felt like I climbed Mount Everest just to write the book and publish it. And then somebody had said to me, well, that isn't over. Now you've got to climb down, and not that there is a mountain 2 times the size of Everest, but imagine there was. Now I was being told I had to climb it again. So I needed to rest. I took about 2 years off having that sort of real edge and driving myself forward. I was still working, but I started to do something which really helped me, and that was record every one of my results and successes. So even though I only sold 100 copies in 15 months, I'd write that down. I'd write down every positive email or review I got from people who'd read my book. Even when I got Facebook likes for blog posts I'd written, I'd write it all down. And what that started to do was convince my mind that actually, okay, I hadn't realized my dream, I was miles off it, but I did have something, and there were small successes. And I thought, if I can have this level of success, then surely I can double from here. Maybe I can't sell 1 million books straight away, and that's not going to happen, but I know that if I sell 100 books, I could probably sell 1,000 books. And that's the way I started looking at it. And rather than getting down about how hard I was going to have to work, I started focusing on the successes that I was having, even though they were small ones. And that got me out of my funk and got me back on the road to coming up with a new book, creating more and more content, and increasing the success I was experiencing. Okay, success tips to share with you guys along my journey. I just did there, which I think is a really big one, which is writing down your results. I find that bypasses the critical, analytical part of your conscious mind, which is always saying you're not good enough, because by writing it down, you're collecting evidence, you're collecting proof. And your conscious mind, the critical mind, can't argue with the proof. And it sinks into your subconscious, and you develop the belief that yes, you have something of value. or you are valuable in yourself. Another one was always looking past the obstacle which is in front of you. I'll give you an example. When I wrote my first book, and if those of you have read it, I used like film quotes, a few movie quotes, and at the time a load of people were saying, look, there could be real copyright issues over this. And there may well be, but I haven't encountered any yet. But that really got to me, because I'd spent 4.5 years writing this, and just before I released it, people were saying, you better watch out, there are copyright issues. And I thought that a lot of the book worked on this, part of the appeal of the book worked on the strength of these examples from movies and the quotes. So that made me think, God, the whole you could be ruined. And I put so much work into it, it's all going to come to nothing. But something I'd always done throughout the journey was to look beyond the obstacle, look to the final goal, which for me was to become a best-selling author, to focus on that rather than the obstacle. So yeah, that appeared to be an obstacle I couldn't get around, but I put it out of my mind, kept going, when I've never heard anything yet about it. So we'll see what happens with that, but that's one of the tricks I would do. Always focus on the end goal rather than on the particular obstacle that's in your way. Breakthroughs, I included this because I think this is a great way of measuring your progress and how you're doing. I'm always looking for the next breakthrough, and I find that if you string enough of these breakthroughs together, you then go on to change your life. Two of mine that I had, one was in 2007 when I first met up with my writing mentor, a guy called Tom Butler-Bowden, who'd written a series of books that I really liked. He's from Australia, but he lived in Oxford. His books are called 50 Self-Help Classics, 50 Success Classics. He's got a whole series of them. Anyway, I wrote to him, I saw his email, said, can you look at my manuscript? Because I'd been writing it, and could you give me any feedback on it? He said, sure, come up to Oxford. I sat down with him, and he looked over it, and he said, well, he looked over it previously, and he said to me, few of these chapters are okay, yeah, good ideas, but this chapter, this is excellent. And as soon as he said those words, I just felt something kind of go through my whole body, because it was the first time I'd heard somebody say to me that my work was good. And what this actually meant, the deeper significance of this, is that I wasn't crazy. Because for 5 years, 2002 to 2007, I've been battling with this idea that I might be crazy. I was off in my own world, walking this path, trying to be successful as a writer, and not really knowing if I was actually any good at doing it. And I think that maybe everybody has these doubts about their work or whatever they're doing. And when you hear confirmation from somebody that actually what you're doing is good and you're on the right path, it can help silence that voice that maybe you are, that what you're doing is there's no validity in what you're doing. So that was one breakthrough. The other was, what was my other breakthrough? Oh yeah, so fast forward 10 years from 2007 to 2017, I was at a talk, and this woman came up to me at the end of the talk who'd bought my book 7 months prior at a talk I'd actually given. I wasn't giving a talk at this time, we were both in the audience, and she came up to me and said, wow, your book's fantastic, it's really helped me. It has helped me quit my job, and I'm moving to Dublin in a week's time, and part of that was the inspiration that your book gave me. And I got this incredible feeling inside me which told me, and again, it's my intuition. A lot of this is learning to listen to your intuition, was telling me, keep going on this path, Joe. Your sales may be slow, you may be getting older, you may be having difficulties in a relationship at the time, but you've got to stick with this. There's something here, and you've got to stick with it. And when I heard that sort of, I say voice, it's not really a voice, it's a thought. When I had that thought, I now turn back to that time 3 years later. I still return to it when things get difficult. That moment when I knew, it wasn't just a feeling, it was an absolute certainty that if I stick with this, it's going to work out. So what my message here is trust those moments of intuition you have, and trust your breakthroughs. When you have a breakthrough like that and you're certain about something, return to that. Use it as fuel, because there are many times when you will doubt yourself and think that you're not going to make it to the next level. And it's important to have those to look back on and to rely on. As I said, that still keeps me going 3 years on. So I think I've probably given you as quick a version as I can and probably wrap it up there. But as I said, the whole point of this evening is to encourage you guys to listen to your inner voice. We've had 3 good speakers, great speakers tonight, who've done the same thing, have found themselves you have achieved success because of doing so. So my message to you guys is listen to your inner voice. Don't let society drown that out. Okay, thank you.